Inside the Arena is presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sportsbook.
Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
We're back, somehow.
We're here.
We've gone over the weather instead of being under the weather or something like that. Episode
you can't keep
30
us down on
something
Inside.
now.
Yeah, 38. You can't keep us down on Inside the Arena. And listen, it's a really fun show today, as you obviously know already. We've got Jessica Campbell. We've got some Sonics legends. And let's not forget that we have a huge show coming up the next couple of weeks because we have the Seattle Sports Star of the Year Awards coming up in a week. So this is really exciting stuff.
That is going to be fun.
One
of the biggest nights of the year in Seattle.
And it's one of those things that I say this to some folks who have asked me about it. You really don't know how great it is until you're there.
Yeah.
Like, it's an award show. It's great. Obviously, it's cool. But then you're there like, oh, this is pretty incredible.
They're selling seats just so people can watch the dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is different.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun, and we're going to be talking to a lot of people there. But what we do every week here, not only Jessica Campbell, Shawn, Kemp, Vin Baker, all on this show.
That's a show.
That is a show. We always like to talk about what is good and bad off the court, off the ice, off the field of play. We call this Four Corners, everybody. You should know that by now if you're a loyal listener to Inside the Arena.
And if you are a loyal listener, thank you so much. And you know that I start this off usually. Yes. Overwhelmingly positive, probably to a fault, but hey, self-awareness is half the battle here. Yeah. So Chris and I were talking about being under the weather. I decided to rip open, as they call it in the sports card world, some 90s basketball cards. And fitting that our show today is Shawn Kemp and Vin Baker. Look at these cards I got out back to back. Shawn Kemp and Vin Baker. Pre-trade, because Shawn's in a Sonics uniform, Vin's in his Bucks uniform. How cool. And Vin's got a little silver signature. He didn't really sign that. It's like embroidered on there. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, that's our show this week. Like one card you open, oh cool, Shawn. Then you got Vin. It's
like a sign, man.
It's a sign, and I'm going to tell you what. The card collecting world is a really fun thing. There's people that are in it for monetary purposes, and that's their own deal. But to me, like the nostalgia of opening stuff from a different era, knowing that box was closed for like 30 years, and that Shawn Kemp and Vin Baker were waiting to see the light of day. That's such a cool thing to me. And I got a couple Garys in there as well. So it's just it was a fun rip, as they say, and cool that we got two of the guys involved in arguably the most impactful trade, at least one of the most impactful trades in Sonics history.
And you'll hear that in a second. I'll tell you what else is good this week. It's time to cancel all the All-Star games.
Except for
the NHL. Yeah. The NHL, I should say, just had gangbusters numbers for the Four Nations tournament. I like it in Canada. They call it the Confrontation of Nations. I kind of think that rolls off the tongue. 5.2 million people watched that game between Canada and the United States. That is better than any sort of all-star game in recent memory for the NHL. The level of play, and the fights that we saw show that this is a different event. It's a different game. This would have been the all-star break, but instead the NHL came up with this idea 1 year before the Olympics, and I think there's going to be a lot of people looking at those numbers saying, let's never have another all-star game. Given the NBA also tried to do one, and a lot of people are criticizing the NBA on how that one is run. The NFL has gone to flag football. Yeah. MLS has tried to bring in a foreign team to play, and a lot of these all-star games now are not getting numbers. Major League Baseball all-star game still does considerably well.
Yeah.
There are guys playing for pride there, but this was something different. The NHL struck gold on this one, and I'll be curious to see if they do an all-star game anytime soon. We know they're not going to do one in 2026, but I'm talking about 27 and beyond. Yeah,
here's the thing. Everything you said, I agree with wholeheartedly. Makes for a great podcast spotter. No, but I'll say this. All you have to do is look at what we saw on Saturday and see the NBA, and I love the NBA, and I hope it's back here in less than a few years. But you see Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama fake shooting shots. And then you see 3 fights in 9 seconds. I mean, what would you rather watch, regardless if you're a basketball fan or a football fan or not even a hockey fan? So kudos to the NHL. There was real passion, like you said. This meant something, right? It really meant something. National pride and everything else. And boy, oh boy, well done. And I hope we see it more often. I know it'd been a few years, not just because of certain layouts, but obviously COVID and things of that sort. But hopefully we see it sooner rather than later again.
Well, and the crowd booing because of all the other issues in the world right now, I think that added an extra element to it with the game in Montreal. So I would not be surprised if we're talking about this same event in 2027, but with more than 4 nations.
I agree. So, yeah, absolutely.
What don't you like this week?
Well, let me preface this by saying this is about as political as you'll ever hear me get. I get all my politics from Chris Daniels. I've said it before. I'll say it again. And I really like Mayor Harrell. I think he's an awesome dude, and I think he's doing some good things. But that joke in the
pulling out the basketball,
he pulled out the basketball and said, "I have an announcement to make." Spun it a couple times. Said, "No, I'm just kidding." I was like, "Wait, what did I miss? What?" Oh, and I'll say this: most people like. Okay, I'm a little okay. That was a mean joke. Okay, but there's people that are really upset by that, and like because they've waited 17 years. So I like any kind of politician that makes a fun joke and all that. But boy, oh boy, maybe not the right time when this year especially we've seen kind of the goalposts move by the NBA, by TV deal, the Celtics, everything we've chronicled on this show. And so as you'll get to in a minute here, but I think that boy, maybe a fun joke at the absolute wrong time.
Well, and to add some extra context, because I was in the room, it was at Benaroya Hall. Mayor Harrell had invited former Mayor Greg Nichols to be in the audience, and he was about 2 or 3 rows back in the front row, and you just start thinking like Harrell's spinning around a ball, talking about the Sonics coming back, and there was the guy who let the Sonics leave and go to Oklahoma City. So I'm sure that cut in just a little different way for Greg Nichols as he was sitting there in the front row.
It's kind of mean.
Yeah. I'll tell you what else is bad. And, there's some elements that are good, but our friend over at KJR, Softy, did a President's Day special with presidents from all the teams and from the university. And it was a good show. And I give Softy credit for putting it together again this year. He had Chuck Arnold, who is the president of the Seahawks, on, and Hugh Weber, who is the president of the Sounders, and they were both asked about grass in Lumen Field. Right. For a lot of fans, this has been an issue now for years, the idea of having grass as opposed to turf in Lumen Field. And Chuck did say, and Hugh backed it up, that in 2025, with the FIFA World Cup, they will be installing a temporary grass field. We've seen that before. They lay it down over the top of the turf. But in 2026, slightly different. It sounds like, according to both of them and through Softy's interview, that after the Seahawks season ends in presumably early 2026, they will lay down a more permanent grass field that will last through the World Cup. And they were kind of non-committal on if it's going to be picked up after the World Cup. But it looks like they will have a fully grass field for several months to grow out for this event that people are comparing with the World's Fair.
Well, there you go. And I think that some people were just hoping it'd be more permanent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd be interested to see what the Seahawks players have to say, right? Yeah. Because there's so many things about field turf and the injuries and we could do a whole show on the number of ACL injuries since field turf started being a thing, right?
Yeah.
But we'll have to see how that goes in the future. No question about it.
Well, you know what else we have to see and talk about in the future?
Yeah.
It's what we do every week. The Supersonic Minute.
Butter.
Wait, here we go. All right. We know the goalposts have been moving through the course of this year. It was Adam Silver talking about expansion discussion in the fall. Then it was September rolled around. He talked about expansion discussion this season.
That's what he told you, yeah.
Yeah. So here we are in February, and we've talked about it on this show, not expecting any announcement at the All-Star game down in San Francisco, and there wasn't even a mention of it. Yeah. We saw that Adam Silver does a question and answer session with reporters before some of these big events, whether it's the NBA Finals, whether it's the All-Star game, and I like Tim Booth's line here from the Seattle Times. He didn't address it because he wasn't asked. Like it didn't even come up. There were more Luka Doncic questions.
That's shocking to me.
Not one question. Not one question about expansion. And there's now a piece by Howard Beck in The Ringer, a long piece about whether expansion should even be visited now at this point. Beck has been around for a long, long time. And he said something that I've said on this show. I don't think they have the votes for it right now. And it's really going to be down to this Celtic sale, what that number looks like, and then how quickly the NBA wants to turn around and start talking about expansion. But that Celtic sale, by all accounts, I've heard this, others have reported it, it is taking longer than previously expected. It's a complicated sale, and the NBA and the owners want to know just how much that team is going to go for before they can talk about just how much a expansion team in Seattle or Las Vegas would go for.
And it's all reasonable. It's just, when you have those goalposts given to you straight from the guy in charge, as he told you in September directly, Chris, we will address expansion this season. I mean, that wasn't conjecture. That wasn't speculation. That was a direct quote.
Yeah.
And so this isn't the first frustrating point in this journey, as you well know. Yeah. But it's like, gosh, I still feel like it's closer than it's been in however long, right? But it's enough to at least give you a pause and be like, oh, okay, like, what does happen after this Celtic sale?
Well, nobody's counting here, but in 2006, Clay Bennett bought the Sonics, and it's 2025 now.
Yeah, wow.
19 years of this stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we're going back and forth. Well, there is a team in Seattle that also had a lot of build-up and a new arena, and that's the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, and they are somebody that took full advantage of that. We've had some amazing memories already with the Kraken. This is their 4th season. They made the playoffs a couple years ago. Slim chance of it this year, but you never know what the future holds. But they do have, arguably the best story in the hockey world right now. And Jessica Campbell is the first full-time NHL assistant on a bench that's a woman. She is an expert on the offensive side of the ice, especially. You see her getting to work. It's really impressive to see. And I was so happy to be able to catch up with her. She is an awesome human being, but just a great hockey coach. We're going to bring you that interview right after this break.
Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sportsbook, is your place for a true in-game betting experience. Download the Snoqualmie Casino Sportsbook app to get in on the action while watching your favorite games at Snoqualmie Casino. Details at snowcasino.com. Seattle's closest sportsbook, Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel.
Well, let's just start with the way things are going right now. Team's playing a lot better. Yeah. What you're seeing out there to maybe kind of start this, and can this kind of be the foundation for something moving forward?
Yeah, I think we're in a good spot right now with the way the team's playing. I think all year we've tried to just build on a foundation from out of camp, and so we're starting to see all those pieces come together, and more the mentality, the identity of the team, just playing a fast, tenacious, smothering on the offensive side of it, and then converting off of that, and then really strong defensively and getting out of our end quick. So goaltending's been great. We've seen players really stepping up and starting to come through offensively. So we need it from top to bottom, and we're starting to see those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly we haven't had a chance to talk to you since maybe when you were hired over the summer or at the start of the season. Now that we're about halfway through the regular season, give or take, just what's the experience been? Like, how fun has this been? How exciting? Whatever the word is, like, how has this experience been for you?
Yeah, exciting is probably a great word. For me, it's the season is always full of highs and lows and all kinds of waves, and I think just riding those waves and taking it all in. Obviously the hockey side of it, focusing on the team and the needs of the team is my focus, but in terms of the experience, it's been wonderful. The guys have been great. Just trying to continue to do my part every day and ways to have a strong impact on the team and get better and demand more of ourselves, demand more of the guys. But overall, the community, the support of the team, the fan base, it's been pretty surreal for me to be part of that.
That's just it. You're just doing what you love. And it's having this impact that it is. I mean, how special is that part of it?
Oh, it's awesome. Every day, I think it's a dream to be able to wake up and do what you love every day. And you don't feel like it's work. And for me, it doesn't always feel like work whatsoever. There's hardships along the way and challenges to navigate, but that's part of sport. And that's, I think, also the beauty of sport. Coming through some of the difficult times as a team makes us stronger. And I treasure that. I value that. I try to bring positivity and just all the pieces that I think as a coach are so important. But it's been a wild ride, and I'm just continuing to enjoy it.
And the way our city has embraced it, I really the hockey world has, right? But Seattle specifically, and we talked about the Seattle Sports Commission, they had the Sports Star of the Year awards, you're up for Story of the Year, and it's just stuff like that. I know that's not what you're doing it for, but how special that the community has really embraced you so quickly in that regard.
Oh, honestly, it means so much for me to be part of Seattle. I just think what this city represents and our fan base is a testament to that, the diversity and just everybody coming out and supporting. In little ways I try to connect with fans, and to see the kids come behind the bench, and not just young kids, girls and boys, but even young adults, and just seeing the connection piece of people able to potentially see, their goals and their ambitions in not just sport, but in life, through some of the things that I've been able to do. So I'm just really grateful to get to be part of this city, this community, and this organization's just always been behind it.
And that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, people coming behind the bench, throwing jerseys over and things like that. You're obviously locked into what you have to do, but when you have those special moments, how cool is that part of it as well?
Yeah, so much of coaching is checking in and out, and obviously when we get to the rink, we're just fully checked in. But I also think it's really critical and important for me to, there's a responsibility, I think, that comes with the opportunity that I have of, I think, carrying this torch for the next generation of young girls, young boys, to be able to dream, of things that they never believed were possible. And I never pictured this opportunity for myself. I never had it to look up to. And so now that I'm, in this space and able to do that for young kids, I think it's really important to find ways to connect with them. And whether it takes 2 minutes to sign a jersey or throw a bracelet over to connect with a young kid, like that could be something that changes their life and the trajectory of their life. So I'm all for it.
And that's one thing I've said to my wife actually yesterday when I mentioned we were doing this interview. Is like, I love that our little 3-year-old boy is going to hopefully grow up where this is normal. This is like, it's wonderful the history you're making, but hopefully this is just the beginning of it. What does that part of it mean to you, that you could have potentially opened doors for so many people? Yeah,
that's what it's all about, right? Is just inspiring the next generation to, I think, believe in also dreams that maybe they don't traditionally see themselves in spaces where maybe they haven't traditionally belonged. And that's, hockey's on its way. We see so much representation now of women across the league and the National Hockey League in so many different roles, but it's not just about young girls, it's also about young boys, what they look up to, who they see as, in a leadership position. I think it's huge for I think, eliminating that gap that we have and just continuing to open doors for others to come into this space and to find themselves following their own dreams.
I know we talked about specific moments a minute ago, but is there a moment that you can think of this season outside of the game itself where there was one of those cool things, whether it's a kid throwing a jersey over or something, somebody you saw? Is there a story you can think of that's happened during the season?
Yeah, honestly, there's been so many special moments. Young kids, obviously, my family's been part of this journey with me, and connecting with my nephews. They're just starting to get into hockey now. We're more on the competitive side, and they were able to come down to Winnipeg. And I think for them to walk into their first NHL arena and to see the magnitude and the spectacle, that was really special for me. There was a moment in Dallas actually early on, which actually inspired me making bracelets for young kids, because this little girl came with her mom. Mom was teary-eyed at the back of the glass during warm-ups, and she threw over the bracelet. It landed on the ice, and actually Jamie Alexiak and Montour, they picked it up, brought it over in the middle of their warm-ups. And it was an important moment, I think, because it obviously for me captured truly what this means for young girls, but young women and adults that are able to be on the sidelines and see what this means for the growth of our game. And I'm just so proud to get to do what I love every day, and for it to have a bigger meaning beyond the game. And so I don't take for granted any opportunity that I get to connect with fans.
Hockey is a beautiful game in that way, on and off the ice, right? What's that experience from that standpoint like?
Oh, it's so cool. I mean, this game is it's just filled with so much good. Obviously, the fan base is one thing, and the energy that a fan base brings to the arena is something in its own. But it's a ride and it's a journey. You fall in love with the team and you go through the ups and downs. And so I think just going through that, it's the closest picture to life. And as you can embark on that within a team setting, you face it together, you lean into it together. And as coaches, our job is to lead this group through that and just support them. So it's really fun, I think, coming up through the Coachella Valley system with some of our younger prospects now, to see them come into their own, to become young men and, aspiring stars in this league. It's a special place for me as a coach to be in.
As far as the experience here in Seattle, and certainly it's ongoing, and who knows where this hockey life takes you. It's one of those crazy things, right? But in decades to come, how will you reflect one day on the time here in Seattle? Being this is when you made that history for the first time, and everything we said about our community. How do you think in, say, 20 years from now, you'll look back on this time in Seattle, however long it may go?
Yeah, looking back, I mean, I hope I'm here a long time. I hope I'm not looking back. But, Seattle's so special to me. I think this is where it all began. And I remember when I first started my business with the goals of coaching at the National Hockey League someday, And I remember seeing Cami Granato get hired by the team just in its inception. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. They're thinking outside the box. They're doing things that's never been done before. And to find myself enter into the same organization, like that full circle moment for me was super surreal when I got hired by Coachella and then the Kraken this season, because I think that there was a connection piece for me early on. And I'm always going to treasure all of these years and times that I've been able to work with this staff, and this organization has supported me from absolutely day one.
Jessica Campbell, and I love what she talks about there. She understands, obviously, the job is getting the Kraken better day by day, but she also understands that she has inspired so many people, and to the point where she's making the bracelets and meeting kids. And I think that the impact that Jessica Campbell is having is that it's going to ensure what she wants, that she certainly is the first, but she's far from the last. And I think that is something immeasurable, and she's doing it with just in the best way possible. Awesome to see from Jessica Campbell. And
you keep hearing people like her talk about the prospects in the system.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see what this team looks like after the trading deadline. Berkeley Catton is a name that has come up quite a
he's
bit
in
there.
Spokane
First round pick that's playing in the WHL in Spokane, and how he's lighting it up again there. Just by what you hear from front office leaders and executives, they think that guy could be something special.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a question of whether he comes up this year in that whole weird 10-game thing that the NHL does, or next year. But they seem to be talking a lot about prospects right now and future prospects versus what is going on the ice.
Well, listen, if you don't make the playoffs this year, which seems likely at this point, I mean, you're talking about making it 1 in 4 years, and you hate to use the R word, rebuild, but that could be what they're looking at when you have prospects like that. And look at no further than a guy like Shane Wright, who Jessica works so closely with.
I think he's been good this year.
And he's led the team in scoring since the end of November. Yeah. And I mean, I think you can chalk up that direct correlation, his work with Jessica the last couple of years. Oh, and he gets to work with Jessica up here. There's, something she's got about the way she delivers that message to him. And I think that, I think it's just the beginning. I mean, this is a franchise with a bright future with all those prospects you said. It's just a matter of what Ron Francis does and when he does it, whether it's trade deadline stuff now or whether it's when this campaign ends up in April or beyond, hopefully. But
let's go from the present to the past.
Yeah,
this was a special event that you and I were a part of over at the Storm headquarters. We saw Shawn Kemp and Vin Baker on the same court with each other for the first time in forever. It seems like the two guys who were traded for each other back helping out with Rise Above. Philanthropic work. That's one of the things that we like to talk about on this show, and the stuff that's going on off the court. And they both had a chance to talk with you and I about why they're here and their this kind of interesting connection they have in NBA past and just some of the work that Vin is doing right now in Milwaukee. He's got a story of his own. Here's a little bit now with Vin Baker and Shawn Kemp.
First of all, we stay in contact. We do a lot of talking on the phone already throughout the year. So we're always in contact with each other talking. So it just feels great. I mean, to me, this is one of the reasons I'm still in Seattle, just because of community. And so it's kind of where I started at around here. When I came as a young man, I got to know the community around here, and it's still doing community work. So it feels great for me.
How did that friendship start?
The friendship started? Well, I mean, we were always friends. I was a big fan of Vin's when he came into the league, and we kind of got to know each other. And he was a fan of mine when he came to the league. So we just kind of got to know each other. And then going through some tribulations in life, we really got to be close after that. Absolutely.
Yeah, Shawn said it all. Like, I was a massive fan of the Rain Man and Shawn Kemp, like every other kid who grew up watching basketball. Not that Shawn is that much older than me. I'm just a big fan. And as Shawn alluded to, we've been staying in touch over the years. We're both about community. We love the city of Seattle. And to be perfectly honest with you, this is our first time being together. And I think it's epic that we're here together. All of us are here together. And we want to do work in this community. We want to give back to the community that gave us so much. And we've been having a lot of conversations, and here we are today to start it.
What does it mean for all three of you to be here and give back to these future players out there?
I mean, Joyce knows best. She's been around here longer than all of us, and she's the one that kind of started everything around here as far as the history of basketball. And, I think what she's been doing throughout the community for years hasn't been warranted enough. So I think it's time for her to talk and let you know.
I think I grew up at a time where I was the only girl in the neighborhood playing with the fellas, so I got a lot of life lessons, but also to see the rise of the game, to see how it's evolved, to see about all the numbers of Division I, collegiate professional athletes that came from the 206, means a lot to me. And I see this guy semi-regularly at different events and things we've done. I get to watch this young man behind the bench in Milwaukee because we're still nosy basketball fanatics. To be here today to see how the game has evolved for women and young girls, I think it's just a treat. It's just a really great opportunity to see that we get to suit up and show up and pay it forward because we've been given so much.
Then I was going to say, you've turned into like a counselor for NBA players. Obviously, coaching one thing, but counseling is another. What can you say about what you're telling other players today, other kids today, as they go through this system of prep and college and professional basketball?
Yeah, so my title is assistant coach at Milwaukee, but I think what makes me unique and different from other coaches maybe around the league is I've been through a lot of the off-the-court issues and situations, and so I can give them stuff on the court, but I think the most important thing I can bring to the table with my team and with the players is the spirit of not only competing but how you live your life as well. So the crime isn't falling down, the crime is staying down, and so I was able to get back up, and now it's important for me to pay it forward. And that's how I do it with my players. Before we talk basketball, it's, we have a relationship, and there's the saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so that's the relationship I have with my players, and that's how I kind of move about the business of basketball and with Vin Baker Recovery and my foundation.
And what can you say about the clinic that opened in Milwaukee?
So yeah, we opened Vin Baker Recovery April 4th of last year. Very excited about that. Basketball is my day job, but sobriety is my passion. And so by the grace of God, I was able to get back up from a life of addiction and celebrate 15 years of sobriety. And so even in that, it's time to pay it forward, give back the blessing of sobriety. And so I was able to open up a clinic with three of my great friends in the city of Milwaukee, Shawn Rogers and Michael Erico. We opened up the facility. It's 16,000 square feet, and we treat everything, mental health, opioid use, alcohol. So I'm very excited about that and hoping to open up more in the future.
Storm's done an absolutely incredible job carrying the basketball torch in Seattle, and certainly since the departure of the Sonics. And one day we hope that comes back. What would it mean for all three of you to see that franchise come back here and be playing once again?
Man, just for me to see the Seattle franchise come through here would be great. Simply because I think Seattle, the Sonics were the leaders in the area of doing community work for a lot of years. So it would be great to see them come back and take that on and still have that passion and have that presence in the community around this area. So I think a lot of times when people think about the NBA coming back, I'm a little different. I think about the kids that's involved. Seeing how many kids have now playing into the NBA of that nature, I think it'd just be great to have those kids to be able to come down to the gym and see some of the stars to elude their vision of becoming something one day. Even if it's not a basketball player, it could be a sports trainer or anything associated with the game of sports.
For a lot of sports fans, they always, when they think of you two, they think about that trade in the late 90s. How did you guys as friends and coming up together, admiring one another, as you guys said, when that came about? Like, how was that experience?
Well, our friendship actually got better.
Okay.
It got stronger when the trade was made, believe it or not. So obviously, I was traded to Cleveland, and Vin was traded here, and they played well, and Vin played well when he arrived here in Seattle. So I always had my eyes on what they were doing here in Seattle. So definitely was a fan.
What a cool opportunity to talk to those guys at the same time. And Joyce, obviously a basketball
Joyce
legend.
Walker, who was in the middle there.
Yeah, a Seattle Hoops legend, without question. Cool to see them in that same setting since that trade, and how life can change in an instant, and the rest is history, so to speak. But yeah, what a cool opportunity to talk to those guys, right?
And I think for Vin Baker, he's got quite a story to tell.
Yeah.
He alluded to it there, how alcohol derailed his career in Seattle, and he was never quite the same as he was in Milwaukee, and he didn't really feel at home in Milwaukee until the last few years. he's got an amazing story about going to work at a Starbucks, finding some stability working as a Starbucks barista, and then going and helping others through counseling. And you heard him talk about the clinic he's now opened in Milwaukee. He's not only a coach, but he's a mentor and a counselor to a lot of these guys now in the NBA. And it almost sounds like he's helping out Shawn a little bit there too, based on their conversation, how they're interacting with each other.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing anytime to see, but it actually, hits a little extra home for any sports fan in Seattle.
All right, you got any final thoughts?
Well, I would just like to say...
Is it the final buzzer time? There we go.
Yeah, I would just like to say, hang on. Those Sonics fans, you mentioned 19 years ago when Clay Bennett was the beginning of the end, okay? And when the news on our Supersonics Minute wasn't the best today. But just hang on a minute. Just hang on. You never know where this road goes. I don't think the commissioner says the things he said just 3, 4, 5 months ago and then suddenly changes it. I think this is something the NBA really wants to do. And you talk about needing to get the votes. I think the NBA is going to do what they have to do to try and make that happen and get those votes. We just got to hang on a little bit longer.
Keep hope alive, says Niko.
That's you know me.
Yeah. You are the most positive man in the newsroom.
Well, I try to be.
Yeah. And you know who else is positive?
David Lee.
Yes. Take us out.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.
Inside the Arena was presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sports book.